All right, we are back for another edition of the Astro Weather. I am your Astro Weather man with your Astro Weather cat. There she is right here, Miss Peaches. That's right. Miss Peaches is here to bring you the weather. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. The Astro cat is taking time out in the crown. He has a crown bed that he sleeps in. It's fitting for the tabby king. Anyway, how is everybody? How are you today? Just getting our week started here around these parts, but it's shaping up to be an interesting week, as they always are these days. Okay. All right, let's do a quick little roll call here, a little name checking. DJ MC, the new Nax, what's going on, brother? Transformation is abound. That. The BC, what's going on, the BC? California Contrarian, nice bull. Yeah, that is from Spain. That is from Spain. So we're staying with the Tauran theme here. The Tauran theme: fertility, calves, bulls, and other fertile bovine. Misbehaving to you. What's happened? Jackie Delario. Janice Phillips. That's right. Tonight's show. Oh, yeah. That's going to be me and Mr. David Palmer. We'll be gathering forces at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. That'll be on David's. Excuse me. That'll be on David's channel over on David's World. So come check it out. It was funny. Last night he was sending me JPEGs. He's working on this theme, and it's called Saving Astrology. And I think he was like going for a Saving Private Ryan thing. And he sent me this one JPEG. It was the first one. It's supposed to be me and him in the JPEG. And I clearly see David. Clearly I can see David. I'm like, who's that guy next to you? And I knew it was supposed to be me. But he says, that's you. I'm like, no offense, it was nothing like me. But we finally figured one out. And I think it looks pretty good. Let me see if I can show you guys. I'll give you a sneak peek of the image that we settled on here. And I think the whole idea is that we're going to be looking at the state of astrology and kind of who's doing what. And there's a lot of ground to cover. David's been in some beefs, and some of you may know about those beefs. Anyway, we're going to talk about that, and of course, just the state of astrology in general. What's going on up there in their skies. So this is that's the JPEG if you haven't seen it. That kind of looks like me. It kind of looks like me. I was okay with that. Right. It's a little bit older, I think, than I'd like to see myself. Maybe I'm not really seeing myself the right way. There's that Larry David episode where he talks about how you see yourself in the mirror and how you see yourself in pictures, and they're very different. The picture is real, the mirror is not. Anyway, I think it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool JPEG. Oh, you can't see it. Oh, that's right. It's the fucking StreamYard effect again. I always have to sacrifice one image so I can share the image. Here we go. Hold on. All right, can you guys see it now? Can you see it now? There you go. That's the image. It kind of that was the one that looks the most like me, even though sometimes, man, the mirror lies. The mirror lies. That's all I can say. So tonight, 7 o'clock, be there. It's David Palmer's channel on YouTube. There you go. Let's see, Magic Cat with an ICK. What's happening, Magic Cat? Let's see. It's worth the time. Athena, yes. Amy Hill, yes. Orlando, I wondered. It was the Emperor's New Clothes thing for a minute. Miss Nikki, what's happening? Yes, for a reading, you can come see yours truly. Thank you, Tom. Amy Gill loves it. I love Robert's new sexy cowboy image. You know, or I have my moments. I kind of look maybe a little bit like it's kind of a Harrison Ford vibe, I guess. But he sent me a bunch of images, and some of them don't even look remotely like me. Anyway, hey, Soul Traveler, what's going on? Integrity Karma, greetings. Josie's Jazzy Junk, Triple G, you're at war, deep constant. Yeah, I want to kill a motherfucker. That's what I want to do. I want to kill a motherfucker. Taking out the heathens. Let's see. Who else we have? Melissa Stanton. Hi, Melissa. Desi Logan. Hey, what's going on? Good to see you. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I love jamming on astrology with David. You know, I've done tons of shows with tons of people, and some of them are really, really good shows, but collaborating with David is always my favorite platform because we have a pretty unique circuitry. Let's put it that way. Reminds me of General Sherman. Oh, please, no. He burned down the South. No General Sherman. Valeria Rubens, good morning. Who else do we have here? Kelly's with us. My Endless Road. What's going on, Endless? Rena and Kurt, Robert, get your gun. If you're in Texas, you got one. I can tell you that. Harriet Bowie, hey. What's going on, Harriet? Good to see you. Okay. Shall we get this show rolling? I'm going to try to end today at about a quarter till or 10 till, probably a 10 till situation because I'll be I gotta put together 15 minutes. You know, sometimes there are days where I'm like, what the fuck am I going to talk about tomorrow? What the fuck am I going to talk about? And I can't really come up with something until last night, and it didn't come to me until about 12:30 in the morning. So I have a theme. I just have to put it together. So for all of you people who are looking for the link to Rumble, of course, you can just go to 15 Minutes of Flame over on Rumble. I'll make sure that I do put it on the show page before we go live. So just come back to the show page. That link will be there, and you'll be able to jump in. So yeah, it was just one of those things. By the time I figured out what I was going to do, it was just like, thus the stories and tales of content creation. All right, let's get into the weather. Where are we? Right here. All right, there we go. That's us. April 29th. 2200, 2025. What if it was 2225? What if you woke up and that was the actual date? What the hell would our world look like 200 years from now? I think there's three possibilities. One is some kind of soft techno surveillance world where everybody's kind of taken care of. There's not a lot of people on the planet, and the legacy systems that were set up by the social engineers have become sort of self-replicating and just run themselves, and people kind of live in this soft totalitarian state that doesn't allow for a lot of individual thought or thinking. However, it is not necessarily a total boot on the neck environment. Then you have complete dystopia, which is a possibility. Where everything is completely collapsed, and we're living off the final remnants of the last golden age before some kind of reset takes hold, and maybe it'll take hold before then. And then the third version, I think, of reality would be separate realities, where you would have one thing happening on one dimensional level, and another thing happening on another dimensional level. And those two dimensions would not necessarily intersect unless people from the higher dimension decided to move into a greater state of density and appeared in the third dimension, right? And they would show up, and people would be shocked by who they saw or what they saw. So lots of possibilities, but 200 years from now, my God, that's an incredibly long time. You know, even the youngest among us won't even be around. It's almost unfathomable. And what's interesting is that if you go back and look at, let's go with 1825 to 2025. That's a huge, huge, huge difference in terms of the world, technology, resources, population. I mean, it's like two separate worlds, really. Anyway, enough speculation. Let's speculate some more. Let's speculate about astrology. Uranus. Look at Uranus. It's getting close to being in Gemini. Uranus in Gemini is going to be freaky, isn't it? I mean, you can kind of see already what's happening if you watch the Sunday night show. I devoted a fair amount of time to this idea of twins and twinning, and Uranus and Gemini is going to be freaky. I mean, we can just go there and start having conversations about androids, robots, synthroids. Synthroids, what you take, any what should we call it? You burn out your whatever. It's early. I'll get there. But clones. I mean, this is the Uranus and Gemini. That's what it's all about. It's all about the other. It's the radical expression of the simulacra of the other. So it's gonna be wild. And particularly it's sextile in Pluto. Oh my God. And then sextile to Neptune. I mean, things are going to happen really, really quickly. We're going to be shot out of a freaking cannon. And goodbye legacy systems, for better or worse. They're gonna go away. And I'm not sure people have a real clear understanding about how much that's going to affect them. I mean, I think we're going to have to start to ask very deep moral philosophical questions about what kind of world we're opting into or opting out of. That's going to be, it's going to be a real challenging piece for people, because that's exactly what Gemini is. Like Gemini is almost like, you know, two realities or two worlds. You'll have your universal banking system world, and then you'll have people that are trying to their best to not be a part of it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough. Okay. Now that I've put a dark cloud over the weather, let's start talking about a little bit more. We've got the sun right there, 9 degrees of Taurus, so it's about to move into the Virgo decan. You can't see the chart? What the fuck? StreamYard, man, StreamYard, you are not doing your thing, StreamYard. This is not a good. The technology is breaking down around here. I mean, I think it's because so many people use StreamYard. Can you guys see that now? I think it's because so many people are using StreamYard that they're just having a hard time with it pulling on the system. That's what I think. I could be wrong, but none of these other programs have this issue. Anyway, so here we go. There's the sun at 9 degrees. It's just getting ready to move into Virgo decan. So all the luxuriating and lounging and feeling groovy about your body, all of a sudden now it has to have a purpose. It has a purpose. So I think depending on what's going on, and we do see a lot going on here, we still have that T-square, Sun, Pluto, Mars, right? There's that T-square. The amount of activity or the amount of work or the amount of quote-unquote sacrifice you have to do or take part in to move yourself out of your comfort zone might not always go over very well over the next few days. It's almost like we're thrust into, and it's not really something that Taurus really likes. You know, Taurus likes to take its time, but all of a sudden we're thrust into higher levels of activity, higher levels of productivity, and people may not like it. You know, especially with this T-square still going on. Like the sun will be at 10 Taurus tomorrow. That's a 6-degree orb. It's separating. So we're going to have at least 3 or 4 days of feeling pushed out of our comfort zone. And there's a tendency, I think, with Taurus to get a little bit lazy. But that's not going to happen. I think there's a general feeling that people would like to opt out and go on a nice vacation somewhere. That's literally not in the stars. I think the tariff talk is going to come into play here. We're going to have Russ on the show on Friday, and of course, he's taking all kinds of notes about the tariffs. So if you want to get caught up to speed on tariff territory, jump in on the show on Friday. Russ has been sending me tariff information for well over a week already. So be prepared for that. And I feel like that's going to be part of the discussion here. You know, they're talking about how the Port of Seattle is empty, like nothing is coming in. And remember, Taurus represents material goods. I mean, it's the second house. It's material goods. It's the things that we produce, right? So in astrology, the 3 earth houses are vitally important. The second house is material resources and the manufacturing of them. Over here, we have the 6th house, Virgo, which is the distribution of material goods. That's what Virgo does. The distribution and the administration, right? So the distribution, customer service, you know, all the things that go into the production and movement of material goods. And then the 10th house, Capricorn, is the, it's the home office. It's overseeing all the operations of the manufacturing process, the distribution, payment, and customer service process. I mean, the 10th house sort of watches over everything, right? So the sun, of course, being representative of the 6th house, 2nd house here, this is what's going on. There's a struggle and there's a challenge to produce things that are going to be, materially and vitally commercial. Widely commercial. I mean, me personally, I think we need to invest heavily in 3D printing. 3D printing, just make 3D printing as ubiquitous and as cheap as possible, and make the materials for 3D printing as cheap as possible. See what you can do around, creating a hemp sort of solution, right, that you pour into your 3D printer. It's mostly going to be hemp, and then what comes out of it is going to be hemp-oriented products, and you can print just about anything. I mean, you can print a house with a 3D printer. And I feel like if we did that, if we mobilized 100,000 small-scale commercial 3D printers, you could kind of revolutionize production. You don't really need a huge, so instead of having 5 or 6 mega factories that make something, you have 500 micro factories that make something. It's much more scalable. You won't be able to do everything with a 3D printer, but you can do a lot. That would be that's what I would do. And if somebody had the money and the wherewithal, and if you imagine like the Pritzkers of Illinois sticking as much money into 3D printing as they do the trans economy, we'd move this 3D printing thing along real quickly now, wouldn't we? Or what if George Soros said, "Oh, I'm going to get behind 3D printing instead of tearing down the government"? I mean, just think about that. If humanity, I'm sorry, I'm going off a little bit here, but if humanity really was interested in quote unquote saving itself, you would have people who would have incredible means sit down in a room and say, look, how are we going to move this thing forward and do it in a way where we're actually raising the level of income? Because you can put 3D printers in foreign countries, third world countries. You can 3D print at that level. I mean, it makes so much sense. But in a sane world, the people with resources would sit down and say, okay, what do we do? How do we make this thing happen? And they would just mobilize it. And all of a sudden, we'd have thousands of small 3D printing factories, mini factories. It takes maybe 4 people at the most to run. And some of these 3D printers are pretty big, but you can print a house in 3 days from a 3D printer. It's doable. They make them. You could probably make a whole car out of a 3D printer. I mean, it could revolutionize production. So in a sane world, you'd have the people with the resources sitting down and say, well, how do we make this happen? But that's not how the world works, because those people want to stay in control of all the resources, all the production, and all the manufacturing. And I think for a lot of people, it can be very challenging. Very, very challenging. If you're a free market person, you would say, well, the free market would allow for that to happen. I don't know. I mean, the free market was fine until it got into the hands of the globalists, and they decided to move the free market over to China. It's kind of like what people say about communism. Communism's never worked. And the people who defend communism say, well, it was it was the person, it was the practitioner. They just didn't follow the script, or they didn't do it right, or whatever the excuses are. There's always an excuse. And I think the same thing, to some extent, could be used for capitalism, because capitalism theoretically is the tool that it allows for the democratic production, distribution of wealth. Right? It's all about being able to be in a meritocracy and innovate and make something, and being able to have a living wage based on the thing that you're making. Right? But we're running into a problem here with both models. Both models seem to have run into a layer of unsustainability. And I'd rather have a capitalist society than a socialist society, because at least with a true capitalist society, if you have something like cash, there's a lot of anonymity around it, and you can manage your world around it. But it just feels like we're, that capitalism is kind of in an iron lung right now, and especially with all the tariff stuff. And then I know a lot of people say, well, just wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. But I just feel like there can be some real visionary steps that can be put into play, and they're not. They're not. It's like, oh, let's build Larry Ellison's and Sam Altman's huge kind of data gathering lab here in Texas versus starting 500 micro 3D printing operations. Anyway, let's talk about the moon in Gemini, because that's kind of what we're talking about here. We're talking about, it's right there, we're talking about the split of the world, or the mirror of the world. And today the moon is actually fairly well aspected. We have a moon Pluto trine. I think that allows for a lot of emotional flexibility today. I feel like you could easily have one position or another, and they can both be very viable, especially here in the early morning hours of the day, or wherever you are with this moon Pluto trine right here. Right? There's also a sense that you don't have to get attached to your position. Gemini is mutable. And as we speak today, right now, the moon is in the first house. So the other thing with the moon in Gemini is that it's one of those phases where people talk about their feelings. Literally talk about their feelings. They don't. It's not a, hey, I'm going to feel about my feelings. I'm going to talk about my feelings, and it's okay. Some people that's what they need. They just need to talk about their feelings. Not everybody is a deep emoter. If everybody was a deep emoter on the planet, we'd all be wearing black and listening to The Cure. But that's not how things roll. And it's probably good. It's good that not everybody's a deep emoter. And it's good that not everybody sits around and talks about their feelings. Now that's diversity. Anyway, the moon in Gemini allows you to do that. And it feels like today, with that Mars and Leo, a lot of diarrhea of the mouth. And Mars and Leo isn't about feeling, but it is about the expression of one's passion and one's, I suppose, courage in some ways, right? So talking about that is going to be on the table. I think it's a good day to do a show with David. There's that Mars is conjuncting the Sun. That'll be good for him for sure, right? And the moon in Gemini allows, I think, for some real interesting interchange. So by and large, I kind of like this moon in Gemini. Especially if you're not too attached to your position, you can kind of talk it. You can talk through the thing. You can play devil's advocate in your own brain. I mean, conversation, you can put two, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? It can be the same this and this, but this is how you get a table with the moon in Gemini. And don't be surprised if people talk your ears off today. And some of it might be interesting. Some of it might be, hey, can you get to the point? Like people often say when I do this show. So I actually kind of like it. At the very least, it will spur some interesting discussion. Don't get too caught up in the discussion part because you won't get anything done. It's one of the things that happens to me. I get into Twitter, and I say now I'm like in this fucking Twitter hole or this X hole, and 4 hours have gone by as I've like posted a bunch of stuff, replied to a bunch of stuff, and it's a cool thing. I enjoy it. It's to me, Twitter is this combination. It is all air. It's all three air signs. Rarely is it Libra. There's very little fairness and balance on Twitter, but it's definitely Aquarian because it's a group, right? It's a very large group, and it's very Gemini because it's like short bursts of communication. At least for me, I'm not verified, so it's 240 characters or less. We have Jupiter also in Gemini right here, and it's still in that square with Saturn. We're going to be dealing with that Jupiter-Saturn square for a while. When Saturn moves into Aries and Jupiter moves into Cancer, we're still dealing with that square. And to me, that's going to be the challenging part of the housing market. And I'm telling you, man, the housing market is not good right now. It is not good. The Fed is going to have to lower some interest rates here for people to start selling their homes. I mean, in this area alone, I think there are 4 houses on my street that are for sale. So for you real estate people out there, you're really hoping that once Jupiter moves past that square with Saturn initially, that it does open up. Jupiter and Cancer will expand the housing market. That you'll be able to maybe get I don't know, a point or two shaved off the interest rates, which would stimulate the housing market. Right now, banks don't want to lend. People don't want to borrow. People don't have the money. The valuation of property is too high. It's, the market's going to have a correction. It won't be a pretty correction. But at least I think with Jupiter and Cancer, once it gets past that square with Saturn and Aries, it will open up. So what are we talking, like July, August, right around there? But initially, no. In fact, you might even hear Jerome Powell talking about raising interest rates, which would not be great. Or the housing market needs one thing. It needs available money. And the banks need to make it available at a much lower interest rate than what it currently is. I mean, it doesn't have to be much lower, just, a couple of points. Just shave off a couple of points and you can stimulate the housing market. That would be a good thing. I mean, during a time where, potentially this tariff thing could really cripple the economy or at least put us into a place that we haven't been before, the housing market could stimulate that. But we all know that that's not always how they play the game. They can say, oh, poor little middle-class peon. You're just waiting for those interest rates to go down, aren't you? So you can sell that second or third house where you're paying a mortgage on and you've turned it into an Airbnb and people don't have enough money to go on vacation to populate your Airbnb. Oh, well, you may have to wait a while. Because unless it suits their own needs, like with their crazy Ponzi mortgage scheme back in the early 2000s, people really don't catch a break. It's the way it is. Venus about to go back into Aries here. It's right at the anaretic degree of Pisces, and it is squaring Jupiter. And let's go back maybe 3 or 4 days. On Sunday night, I didn't talk about the weather. I didn't talk about anything like that. I just went kind of deep conceptual. And had I gone there, I would have looked at this Venus square to Jupiter, which can bring a great deal of zeal and enthusiasm in relationship, but it could also be something that is quite unrealistic in a lot of ways. And that energy is still a bit in the air, but Venus is about to pop into Aries. This 29th degree is it's a critical degree. And as you talk through your emotions with the moon in Gemini, I'm sure some of you will also have discussions about key critical relationships. The hard thing about relationships now is, just like the housing market, at one point in time, there was just a lot more product on the market. But for people who were conscious and aware, and you have not partaken in the jibby jab and the carjack, and let's say, for instance, your relationship that you're in isn't really all that fulfilling or, nutrient dense, and you want to change the relationship, you can do it. I mean, people do it all the time, but now there's this added layer of, well, okay, who can I be with that literally has not been pricked? And don't think that doesn't come into the discussion, because it does. It does. It adds a whole layer of scrutiny. Like, were you vaccinated? Did you take that shot? Did you take that jab? No, you're not lying now. And believe me, there are people who will lie. They'll lie just to get into a relationship, whether it's a man or a woman. They'll lie. Oh no, I didn't. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, yeah. They couldn't pressure me to do that. Just wait. Just wait. Like, this is one of those moments in time where somewhere out there are people who are starting relationships based on layers of information that are not being shared. Let's put it that way. Because people are in some ways desperate. They don't want to be rejected. Probably in their minds, like, I'm fine. They don't really need to know. I'm fine. Nothing's happened to me. To me, this is the Venus-Jupiter square. And I think relationships that start under Venus-Jupiter square, especially that 29th degree of Pisces, and again, it's kind of like, oh, what happens? What happens if I let go of the things that are familiar to me, and I want to branch off or break off or do something new? There's a lot of allure with this Venus-Jupiter square, but there's also sort of the backside of it, which is some of the things I've been talking about. Mercury's trining Mars again. It's separating 9 degrees right there. You can see it. So there's still this theme of lots of talking going on. Talk about your feelings. Talk about your feelings. How do you feel about your feelings? How do you feel about this? Uranus is in a sextile with Mars. That's interesting. It's novelty. But in order to engage it, you have to stop talking. So today, get your talking out of the way, say what you need to say, and then get shit done. I am not, the only time I'm going to be on Twitter today is to announce that David and I are doing the show. Other than that, there's no Twitter. No Twitter for me today. All right, let's talk about our star today, shall we? Here we go. Spin her up. Was at the old True Hemp Science World Headquarters over the weekend, and partook in a little bit of product there. And of course, True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all things CBD. It is the best and most organically sourced CBD product you will find. And Chris's application of it is top notch. He's a mad chemist. So all you got to do is spend $100 more, type in 15MINS, that's 15MINS, and you will get the goodie bag, which is an order within an order, and you will enjoy what you get. I promise you, whether it's what you purchase or what Chris throws in there. And the cool thing about the little goodie bag is that there are products that you probably haven't tried. It's like a Whitman sampler. $150 more gets you free shipping. Always a 30-day money-back guarantee. All right, let's talk about our True Hemp Science story today. It is David Icke, the Icke Meister. Look at that chart. David Icke did not sign off on a happy lifetime. Am I right? Look at that Grand Cross right there. This is somebody who is going to meet challenges. To me, the Grand Cross, now in this instance, it is a Grand Cardinal Cross. It is all about mastery. And people that have a Grand Cross in their chart, a lot of times are not happy. Well, why the fuck did I get this assignment? Well, it's the way it is. Usually you get a Grand Cross as a byproduct of a splash start when planets are in 9 of the 12 houses. It doesn't always have to be the case, but usually that is the case. Let's talk about David's chart, besides the fact that it's difficult. 27 degrees Libra rising. When David was younger, he was not an unattractive man. There's a reason why they put him on the news for the BBC. David was a sportscaster for the BBC because he had been a goalie. David was a soccer goalie. His life was devoted to sport. And so he translated well to the screen. When you look at younger David Icke, he's not, he's a handsome dude. And he's much older now. And he's a little craggier, but he still has some of that Libra rising refinement. Mars in the first house in Scorpio, and it's retrograde. One of the things you'll find out about David is that he's intractable. And you get that with a lot of the fixed stuff in his chart, right? He's got that true node in Aquarius, and he's going to map out this new territory. He's going to be radical, unconventional. And, that's really Mark David's style, right? Like, he's got Juno in Aquarius, so he's seeding new ideas with people. They're kind of revolutionary, and not always like in the early days when David was talking about lizards and shapeshifters. Not a lot of people were there. Not a lot of people were talking about it. So he's kind of, first on board. And David wrote some books back in the day that are really good books. Really good books. Put a lot of time and effort and work into them. Now it feels like, I think David's aware of his mortality. I think he understands that, if you were to go back in 1996, with David Icke in 1996, and him talking about the things he was talking about in 1996, it's when I first heard him on Art Bell. And you were to sit down with David and say, okay, well, here's your role. You get to be a messenger. You get to talk about these things. You get to write these books. You get to really twist people's paradigms. And one of the early messages around David was this idea of love. You don't get that anymore with David. Like you don't get that. When you follow him on Twitter, he's really kind of dark and totally black-pilled. And David just has no he has no hope for the human race. Of course, his daughter passed away a couple of years ago, and I think that really impacted him. I think losing his daughter sent David into a really dark place. And so I think 1996 David, feeling like he's got this message, he's a revelator, he's here to tell the world and break things down, but also back it up with this feeling of a greater love that's beyond the illusion of this world. I think that if you sat down with David and actually had a very honest conversation with him, he might tell you that he failed, or that humanity in some ways failed him, right? But he's got that Mars in the first house, so he's gonna battle through no matter what. He's got Mars in Scorpio, and it can be very formidable. Now, if you're familiar with David's story, one of the things that happens to him is he goes to South America. And I believe it's either Peru or Ecuador or someplace like that. I think it's Peru, where he has this transcendent experience. And if you look at his ninth house with the moon and Uranus in Cancer, to me, that would be that experience. I mean, that would typify that experience. It was like all of a sudden David has the scales drop away from him. I don't know if he did ayahuasca or not. He doesn't mention it, but he talks about this experience where all of a sudden he gets this sort of major download. And I can see that with the moon Uranus conjunction in the ninth house. Like he's traveling somewhere and he's having his circuitry kind of blown wide open. And he's got Pluto in the 10th house. And he has that south node there. And again, this is like somebody who has a mission. And Pluto it can be very transformational in the 10th house. And somebody who is a public figure like David, Pluto is, you can see what Pluto does. It's transformational. Whatever you think of David Icke, he's changed people's lives. His books and myriad of interviews, right, has transformed the world in some ways. And you could question whether or not it's for the better or the worse. That's for you to decide. But make no mistake, that's the world that Pluto plagues. And with the south node here, even though it's kind of wide, right? Even though it's kind of wide, it's like David has a mission to fulfill. And again, with Leo, what are you talking about? You're talking about, this heart and this love energy, which again was very present when David was doing these early books. But along the way, I think the darkness and being treated in the way that I don't think he can set foot in England. And there are certain countries he can't travel to. And you can see this with Moon Uranus and this Grand Cross. But it became very difficult for David to feel like he could be effective in, certain parts of the world. And he's still a hammer, right? He's more of a hammer now than he's ever been. But I don't think David has a lot of hope for humanity. Let's put it that way. He's got that Sun-Jupiter conjunction in the 7th house. But it's challenged. Sun-Pluto square. Sun opposing Mars right here. Right? So theoretically, David's kind of best version of himself is in a relationship and partnership, or being in an interview situation where he's being interviewed. And I think David does really good interviews. But to me, that's very seventh house. And I'll never forget the first time I heard him on Art Bell. Like, who the fuck is this guy? He's speaking my language. I know exactly what he's talking about. There are people who think that David is also a reptilian. And I've seen some things where it's not difficult to consider that or ponder that. Let's put it that way. And that brings us to his 12th house, which is kind of otherworldly. You know, Saturn in the 12th, he never really feels like he's a part of this world. Period, end of story. Neptune provides some refuge, right? It's in its own house. Both of them are retrograde. I think he's constantly trying to find the world underneath his feet. And this is from somebody who's a Taurus with the conjunction in Jupiter. But other than that, what are we talking about Earth-wise? Not a lot. He's got Chiron in the 3rd house, Capricorn. He's got nothing in Virgo. Oh, he's got Vesta, but that's about it. So even with the Sun-Jupiter conjunction, which is really the only true Earth that he has in his chart, this is kind of an otherworldly chart in a lot of ways. And it's really through relationship, through the connection of talking and sharing with another that David Icke actually grounds himself. It's not an easy chart by any stretch. I'm just looking at some other things with him. He is kind of visionary, though. Right? He's got Pallas and Pisces, which is very psychic. And I think he can, and did at a certain point in time, see around the corner. But now that seeing around the corner, it's just, every corner is just dark. There's no way out. There's no way out here. And so is David Icke now a prisoner of the Grand Cross that he was here to somehow surmount and integrate? Or has he overcome these challenges and he doesn't even really know how much he's overcome? So TBD with Mr. David Icke. There you go. There's your True Hemp Science story of the day. All right, we are out of here. I got to go crank up the other show and still have time to visit the men's room before we start today's next version of the experience. If you like the show, hit like, subscribe, hit that notification. The algorithms on YouTube have changed a lot. And now it's really all about what you're watching. So if you're watching a lot of astrological content, there's a good chance you're going to be fed a lot more astrologers. Hopefully I'm in. All right. You know the drill. Take care of each other. Treat each other well. Treat yourself well. Take care of yourself. God bless. Love you all. Robert Phoenix signing off.